Okay, bean pot. So a bean pot, we're just gonna do some old-fashioned kind of like crock, like a round crock style situation. And that was what they used to, it was like their slow cooker. So you put your, beans and a piece of like pork in it with some water and some molasses, and you shove it into the back of your hearth and it slow cooks overnight. And then you'd have beans for breakfast. So this is, I think this is 3 pounds. You should go anywhere between 3 and 4 pounds, most likely. And as always, get it stuck to the wheel. I do suggest you use a bat for these. Anytime you have like a lidded vessel, I suggest you use a bat, because when you have a lid that is an attachment, you don't want to warp the pot at all, okay? All right, so cone it as many times as you need to. Center it quite low. And if you can't see, get closer, please do. We're gonna dive down again to that 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit thicker. If you're gonna put it in the oven, it wouldn't hurt to just have it like maybe just a little bit, tiny bit thicker, not too much. Okay, so I have opened it just, I don't know, maybe my palm's width open. I'm gonna compress the bottom. If you have a hard time compressing with your fingertips, get a sponge and use the sponge as kind of like a barrier between you and the clay. Always compress, like especially with larger things. This is something I learned from Bridget, actually. You gotta push from 3 o'clock from the outside to center, pick up outside to center, so that it discourages any S cracking. Okay. If you're
that from Daria Cake.
if you're left-handed, of course, you're moving from 9 o'clock to center. Okay, that should be enough. Do compress. Take your time to compress. When you have compressed, it's time to donut. So again, a refresher on the donut. Your non-dominant hand is going to be on the outside, back into centering position, pushing from the very back of your hand, the whole that side of your body pushing forward. Your right, or your dominant hand, peace fingers resting on the top. You can put more fingers on the top if you want. A slight crook of the finger, a slight crook of the thumb, and we're pushing down and forward. We're not digging in, we're not pulling back, okay? You want to make sure that everything is going in the same direction, kind of forward, a little bit down, to really wrangle in the rim. Get more water if you need to. We're gonna undercut a little bit if you like that. You don't have to if you don't want to. And then we're gonna lift up. First pull can be a little bit tricky, so if this is a lot of clay for you, I'm gonna invite you back to this non-dominant hand centering position, and you're gonna push forward and squeeze the clay into your palm, okay? This is what I do to help me get a first pull of like a lot of clay. That is super helpful. Compress, always compress in between everything. And then we'll do that again, digging in to give us some space for our fingers. I'm gonna pull straight up again. I'm gonna start to slow my wheel down. And I'm gonna keep a thick rim. This is important. Super thick rim, because we need to save enough clay here for that seat for the lid. All right, this is plenty tall, maybe too tall. Let's find out. I'm gonna start to belly it out, digging in from the bottom again. And inside hand is starting to push out. I'm gonna slow my wheel down because I don't want to get it too crazy. And then we'll come up. Hang out at the top, gently release. Still thick. I kind of want it a little thicker, so learn from me. Don't thin it out this much. Okay, watering. I'm gonna maybe do one more pull. Digging underneath. I'm not too concerned about the belly shape right now. I just want to get the clay at an appropriate thickness. Okay, here's where I'm gonna stop with the rim. Compressing. All right, fish out the water. A lot of times when I see what I see in my classes when we're doing something with a big belly, there's a lot of water inside and then all of a sudden it starts to collapse. So fish out the water more often on a rounded bottomed thing. Okay, get underneath the bottom there, get any clay that's attached to the bat. And then we'll do a shaping pull. So I'm just pushing the clay into the rib and we're kind of lifting up the pot so that it's not so slumped. Okay, here's where we're doing the seat, and this is where I will likely screw it up. Okay, so wet the rim. Any questions at this point? Okay, I am just kind of like flattening and rounding it because it's still a little thin for my taste. And I kind of want to bring it in somewhat before I even start that. So I might collar a little. So if I were you, just don't pull it out so wide like I did. It is harder to bring it back in after you've gone out. All right, I'm gonna stop fussing with it now. Here's where we're gonna add the rim, like it was a minute ago. How you place your hands is important. So your outside fingers are gonna do kind of like a lobster pinch, but a little bit lower to support. It's not so much pushing, you're just there to support the rim as it is being forced upon from the top, okay? It's just there to keep it circular. And then you're gonna offset your dominant index finger, okay? So it's pushing down the inner half of that rim. And I'm just pushing down, and it is not gonna be a right angle. Like I've taught you guys to do lids in the past. This is a much more kind of loosey-goosey kind of a situation, so that the lid has a little bit of wiggle room, because that's just what they looked like back then. They didn't spend a whole lot of time making sure that it was an exact fit, because any little bit of warping would have caused that lid to not fit in the kiln, you know, or after it came out of the kiln. So if you feel like you don't have enough clay to work with, do a little short pull just right underneath the rim. And then get back in there. Now I'm pushing with my index fingers, both of them, to kind of create that little divot. Thinning out the rim somewhat. Don't get it too thin, otherwise it'll be easy to chip when you're working with it, okay? So this is that tiny little seat. Oh, man, this like kind of loosey-goosey rim thing really bothers me after being, you know, making so many precise things. Ooh, I have a stress crack down here. Let's fix that. So right where the water was at the very base is where the clay wanted to start to split. If you see that, get the water out, do a rib compress right where that crack was, and then just reshape it if you think it needs to be reshaped. I like a little, kind of like a bulbous pot situation. You can emphasize the rim if you want to, just flip your rib tool around and create that little stripe with the corner of the rib. And you can, sharpen up that rim if you want to. Okay, just don't go too thin. Obviously, you've got that little spot right there that will be more delicate than the rest of it. All right, good enough. Here's where we're going to measure that rim, the interior part where the lid is gonna sit. All right. Get your calipers out and go like to the middle of it. So it is like the seat right here is kind of like this swooping kind of slope. So aim your calipers to the middle of it, not at the very top of the rim, not at the very bottom of the rim, of course, but like in that middle area. And then we'll make our lid from those measurements. Okay. We'll let that sit. Get your wire. You can cut it now or cut it later. It's up to you. I would suggest, since we have that one bat per class rule, that you try to get your pot off of the bat versus get your lid off of the bat, because it'll be easier to move. You can do one of those, you know, cut it again, put a bat on top, flip it over, then remove, and then flip it back, right? So that you can get it off without picking it up by the sides. Okay, so find those 3 dots on the sides, find the one that moves the most easily, and then just keep lifting from that side, and then you're good to go. Thanks. Okay, so for the lid, this is, I don't know how much clay to tell you, how much clay to use. It depends on how wide your pot is. This is 1 pound, and give yourself more than you think you need, because it's so much easier to cut off the excess than it is to like start again because you didn't have enough clay, okay? And this is a basic lid, just a flat lid. Okay, I am centering it quite low, quite a low disc. Okay, here's where we're going to start immediately defining the little knob portion. So however wide you want the knob, leave that amount of space and then push straight down. Start to create a little valley. And then we'll start to open this up just like it was a pot, normal pot. Open this up, flatten out the rim. Be aware and be cognizant of the thickness here. You do not want a very thin rim or lid. You want something that's going to match the thickness-ish of the top of your pot. Okay, so what I'm going to do, since this is kind of a flat situation, I'm going to round that little knob. And we're going to ignore it for a second because we need to compress. First of all, let's just see if we're even anywhere close to the width. No. So we're gonna keep going.
What was the width, just out of curiosity?
I didn't grab a ruler, so I don't exactly know, but I've got my calipers here. Yeah, it is, it's probably 6 1/4. Okay, so once you get it roughly the proper width, it does not have to be set yet. We're going to compress, and the way we're compressing is we're pushing from 6 o'clock to the center knob. We're not going to mess with the knob right now, but this is an important thing to do because oftentimes, and I can't tell you how many lids I have made that have been just beautiful and fit perfectly, but underneath was an S-crack. So this level of, or this method of compressing is super important to push towards the center so that we can compress all those clay particles and try to coax them to stay together. Okay, so when you have compressed a number of times, we're going to start to deal with the knob. And so with this, I always just I follow the height of the lid and then I just take my fingers and squeeze in. And you can start to fiddle with the shape. And if it's not narrow enough here, just give it a little extra squeeze. And then here we're gonna compress into that space that we've just created. And the knobs on these things were pretty basic, just kind of like a rounded situation. Enough to get some fingers underneath. Okay. Now, just to make it look nice, we're just gonna do maybe 1 rib or so. And then clean it up so that we can start to cut it to the proper size. All right, take your calipers and line up the tips with the center point and then just lean one down. Check and see if it's the same size. If it's not quite centered, get it there. And then you'll take your needle tool and cut along that line that you've made. Cut cut underneath it. And then remove. Okay. Then we will double check that measurement. And of course you can flip your calipers, which I would suggest. I'm just lazy and I didn't grab a ruler, so. Clean up your edge. I like a softened edge. And you can even get a little bit underneath it with, don't go too far underneath it, just a little to clean up that bottom edge as much as you can reach right now. Okay, now I would not cut this until it's a little bit drier, but then you can just set it aside. And then that's the lid. Questions?